Hello there, it's Sarah from Paper Lovely. Thanks for joining me today. I've got part 1 of my 10 cards 1 kit using the Simon Says Stamp December 2018 card kit, and here I'm giving you a quick look at what was included. So here I am jumping into card number 1, and I'm going to go ahead and start off with one of these watercolor panels. I'm using the Daniel Smith watercolors that were included in the kit. At the moment I'm working on a wet to dry technique, so I have no water on the background of my paper as I'm putting the color down. And then you'll see towards the end I will go ahead and do a more wet on wet technique, adding some water in the background and then letting the blue for my sky and snowdrift sort of fade up from the bottom. At this point I'm going to go ahead and turn up the music and let you enjoy the process. If you want to skip ahead to where I am putting the card together, you'll want to go to the 5-minute 30-second mark. Here I've grabbed an opaque white from my stash. This is a mister, and they don't actually make this anymore, but I have quite a bit left, so it's what I usually use for this. But any opaque white would work, and I've just added some to my block there, and I'm just gonna flick my paintbrush along the edge to add some snowdrops. I've trimmed down this panel to 4x5 1/4, and here I'm popping that up using some Scotch foam tape. That's gonna keep my panel from showing that little bit of warping that I had there. And then I'll place that down on top of my card base. And this is a dark green card base. I'm sure that it's MFT, but I'm not sure of the color at the moment. I will have it linked below. For the inside, I wanted to try and match that pretty red color from the watercolors. So I ended up using American Crafts Cranberry Pigment ink, and I've stamped out that Christmas cheer sentiment. I've grabbed some washi from my stash, and I'm gonna add that along the bottom here. I'll add some ATG to the back of that. Place it on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 1. For card number 2, I'm going to create a little snowbank scene here. So I've grabbed my Lawn Fawn stitched hillside borders, and I'm running those through using some Nina Solar White cardstock. I'm going to layer these here using my ATG gun. And now that those are attached, I'm going to place them along the bottom of my panel here. And this is trimmed out to 4x5 1/4 from the snow flurry pattern paper that came in the kit. So place that down, and then I will go ahead and trim off the excess. Here I'm going to use this sticker, and I'm going to place that down on the extra Nina cardstock bit that I had left over, because I want to add some of that Marvy snow pen all along the snow around the signs. So I'm going to go ahead and place that down, and then I'll grab my heat tool and set that. If you can't tell, I love this snow pen. I could use it on every card. Once I've got that done, I'm going to just take my little pokey tool there and make a space to stick the bottom of that pole in. But before I place that down, I'm going to add ATG to the back of that, and I'll place that on top of my red card base. And this, I know, is made from MFT's Poppy. I'm going to add a little bit of the art glitter glue behind this post, and I did go ahead and just trim that out, leaving the Nina cardstock behind it. And I'll go ahead and place this down in the center. I love that texture. Here for the inside panel, I've combined the sentiment "Sending Christmas Cheer to You and Yours," and I'm going to stamp that out using Lawn Fawn's Lobster. And then I'll trim off a little piece of that extra I had from when I cut down my front panel, add some ATG to the back of that, and I'll place that along the bottom of this panel. I'll again add some HEG to the back of that and then place it on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 2. For card number 3, I'm going to create a chibi light up card. Here I'm giving you a look. I lost a little bit of footage here, but you can see the holes that I have poked out there along the train on this scene. I've trimmed this piece of pattern paper down to 4 by 5 1/4. And then I've taken my pencil, laid that panel down, and made little marks of where I want the lights to be. So this little piece of paper is going to hold my battery. I'm going to add some ATG to one side of that, and then the battery will fit down inside there. Next, I'm going to go ahead and trace out the pattern that I'm going to run my copper lines on. So if you'll see up there in the corner, I bought this starter kit, which comes with this great book that shows you all different ways to create different circuits. And if you're interested in these lights, I definitely suggest getting the kit. It really explains things super well. But basically what I'm doing is I'm creating one line with a negative charge and one line with a positive charge. And there's really no difference to this, except you can't let them mix. I'm going to use the same copper tape for both of the lines. You just don't want to let them cross. And then of course you have to make sure that you have your battery lined up properly when you place it inside that holder. So I've got some copper tape there. I'm trimming that down. It's just a little wider than what I needed. And here I've grabbed my lights. The lights are marked which side is negative and which side is positive. Again, it really doesn't matter at this point. You just want to make sure that they are all facing the same way. So all of the tips and all of the longer ends should be facing the exact same way. Here I'm going to peel the backing off of this tape and I'm going to run it along the lines that I created. It's a little finicky when you want to turn the tape, but you just have to be patient with it and you'll get there. And I'm making sure that where I marked the batteries, there's little copper ends on either side of the battery, and you want to make sure that those copper ends are going to touch the copper tape. And then here I'm going to turn this one last time. I'm going to run it up over the top of this flap, and then I'll go right around into the bottom. But take note, I am not connecting those. It's just so that either side, either line of the copper tape will touch each side of the battery. Here I'm going to take my bone folder. I'm just going to burnish that down really well. It makes the lines nice and smooth, and that way you'll have a nice good connection. And then I'll go ahead and place down my batteries, or my, my lights. And let me know if you guys need a slower tutorial on this. I've had it on my list for a while and I just haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm happy to make one that's a little bit slower and more in real time if you would like me to. And there you can see I placed in my battery, and when that flap is touched down, the lights are working. So now I need to make a well so that my battery is not constantly touching. This is a little bit tricky. It depends on the type of foam tape that you use, and then it also depends on the pack of foam tape that you get. Every once in a while, some are thicker than others. So I'm using a double layer here, and then I've trimmed my 1/2 inch foam tape in half. And I'm just going to layer that down. I ended up going with just this double layer because I used some acetate. I'm planning on mailing this, and I want to make sure that even if something gets set on it in the mail, that the battery is not going to wear out. So I'm only going to use a double layer. You may want to use 3. You just sort of have to experiment with the type of battery that you have and the type of foam tape that you're using. So there I'm just testing to make sure that that's all lined up properly, and there you can see my train is lighting up. And I'm going to grab a piece of acetate here. Now what I'm going to do is place this in between the battery and that top piece of paper that is folded over. So I'm just going to trim this down so I have a nice and straight little piece here. And then you'll see when I place that in between, it won't light up, but when you pull it out, it will. So I'm going to measure here to see where I want to leave the backing on that tape. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut across. And then because I won't be peeling away the backing where the acetate is, when the recipient receives it, they can easily pull that out, and then the card will light up for them. And there I'm just adding another piece of foam tape to make sure my battery doesn't shift around too much. You have to make sure that even when it goes through the mail, no matter if that battery moves over, it's still going to touch both sides of that copper tape. So there I've got my acetate in there. See, I'm leaving the backing on just that portion of the foam tape. And I want to make sure that that is nice and lined up. And then I'll go ahead and place down my front panel. And I'll burnish that really nicely with the back of my bone folder. And then that was sticking out a little bit far for me, so I'm just going to trim a little bit off the edge there. For the inside, I've again got my Nina panel trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to stamp out the sentiment "Sending Christmas Cheer," and I'll use my Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink for that. And then again from my stash, I pulled out some red glitter washi. I'm going to run that along the bottom. And then I'll add my ATG and I'll place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 3. Here I've turned off one of my lights. I'm just going to give you a look of what that looks like when it's lit up. So the camera's catching it pretty bright, but in person it looks like the lights behind. You can actually see the train and the lights coming in behind it. Okay, so for card number 4, I am going to use the candy cane die that was included in the kit. And I'm trimming that out from some Nina Solar White and some MFT Poppy cardstock. Here you'll see I've gone ahead and poked out all of the white centers, and I'm trimming off a piece of Post-it tape. I'm going to place that along the back. And when I popped out those centers, I did go ahead and try and keep them all in order because I'm just going to take the opposites here. I'm layering this red piece over top of the white now that I have sticky all along the back, and I'm just going to poke those in to make sure that they're sticking to the tape, and that will keep everything all together. I've also grabbed a Sizzix circle die. This measures 3 inches. And here I'm going to line up my sentiment Sending Christmas Cheer along with those candy canes to make sure I have everything placed properly. And then I'll stamp that sentiment out using Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink. I've grabbed this ribbon from Hobby Lobby. I got this in the same section where I get the leaf trim and several other things that I pick up there. This was new to me this year. I hadn't seen it previously, and I love this lime green color mixed with the red. I have, of course, also trimmed down that red snowflake panel to 4 by 5 1/4. So I've added my Scor-Tape to the back there, and then I'm going to trim this piece of the ribbon off. I'll peel away that backing, and I'm going to place that along the bottom of that panel there. It's about 2/3 of the way down. Press that in place and then wrap the extra around the edges. This tends to fray a little bit on the ends, so I wanted to wrap it so I would have a nice clean edge. And then because I have those ruffles on the background, I'm going to use Scor-Tape to place this down. And I'll add a couple of rows of that along the back, peel that away, and then place that down on top of a white card base. And this card base is made from Neenah Solar White. I've grabbed some of my sticky thumb adhesive squares and placed those along the back. I'm going to place that down. And then I grabbed 1 or 2 of the smaller squares and placed those on the candy canes that were hanging off the side of the circle. And then I will add some art glitter glue behind the other portion of the candy cane and place that down on the circle there. For the inside, I'm again on a Neenah panel trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to stamp out the sentiment "to you and yours," and I'm using Lawn Fawn Lobster ink. And then I wanted to pull in a little bit more of the black from the front of the card, so I've just scattered some of these snowflake stamps around, and I'm going to stamp those out using my intense black ink. I'll go ahead, add my ATG to the back of that, and then place that on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 4. For card number 5, I am stamping out all of the colorable stamps that came in the stamp set, and I'm going to use my intense black ink for that. Again, stamping on my usual Neenah Solar White. Here I'm stamping out the sentiment, making a list, checking it twice on that scrap piece of cardstock. I'm going to trim that out, and then I'll create a banner edge along the bottom. This measures probably about 1.5 inches square. I grabbed some red twine from my stash and just wrapped that around twice at the top there. And there you can see off to the side, I have already colored in my Santa. I used Prismacolor for that. Just to save time, this video is running really long, but I will have the Prismacolors listed for you in my blog post. And then I again took that Marvy snow pen and added a little bit of snow on the ball of Santa's hat and around the rim of his hat as well. I've got this panel of the red and white stripes pattern paper trimmed down to 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to place that on one of the blue card bases. Then I'll use my art glitter glue and go ahead and place down Santa. And then finally I will take that banner and place that along the top of the panel. For the inside, I've got a Neenah panel trimmed to 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to stamp out the sentiment Sending Christmas Cheer. I'm using my intense black ink for that. And then I wanted a little something extra, so I'm also going to add that tree off to the side, and I'm stamping this using Stampin' Up! Garden Green ink. I'll add my ATG to the back of that. Place it on the inside of my card base. And that will complete card number 5. Here are a few close-ups of the finished cards. In the description box below, you'll find my blog post, which has additional photos and links to the supplies I used. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a comment or a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.